UFOs and UAPs are not alien in origin, but secret man-made craft. A 2021 poll indicated that 11% of the American population say that UFOs reported by people in the military are definitely evidence of intelligent life outside Earth, and 40% say this is probably evidence, meaning 51% of people in the US are fairly convinced that UFOs are alien in origin. Occam's razor is a theory that simply states, usually, the simplest explanation is the correct one. In this case, ionization and world sighting locations point to a man-made source for UAPs and UFOs. In March 2024, the Pentagon released a 63-page report regarding all the evidence that they had going back to the 1940s regarding UFOs, concluding that there was no evidence that UFOs were extraterrestrial. The term UFO stands for Unidentified Flying Object. Scientists have recently replaced this with a new term UAP, which stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon. If they are not extraterrestrial and are not misidentified, there is only one other option. Guy Kramer was contacted by NASA JPL, which is their jet propulsion laboratory, in the early 2000s to help them with a classified program concerning air ions. When they contacted me, I was surprised and asked them why they were not speaking with their own NASA scientists. Their response was that I was considered the expert in the field, and they did not fully understand this area, which encompasses several scientific disciplines. At the time, Guy had been working with Senator John Warner's office when he was the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee on several programs that required Guy's background in this field. One of his papers regarding a highly critical and large potential weakness to U.S. Homeland Security, which had been unknown prior to this, was submitted to the White House for review by Warner's chief of staff. Guy's theory, which is still undisclosed, was verified by the White House to be a very substantial, clear, and present danger, and mitigation efforts he proposed in the paper were then provided to the Department of Defense for testing. Guy had been a research assistant to his grandfather, Donald Hings, from 1986 to 1991. They routinely tracked aircraft up to and over the horizon utilizing proprietary instrumentation which passively tracked these aircraft from the air ion wave propagation that travels at about one-third the speed of light from the aircraft, even tracking the Space Shuttle Discovery entire atmospheric re-entry and landing from thousands of miles away. Hings was the inventor of the walkie-talkie in 1937 and had 56 patents to his name. Hings was the leading expert in this field, and with his passing in 2004, Kramer became the de facto air ion expert. Guy now has 44 patents to his name, with 41 of them in the field of physics, including a light-bending, invisibility material which has been granted in 5 countries and is pending in numerous others. Guy continued, NASA JPL was unable to disclose much about the program, but I helped them with what they were looking for. They told me that my information, which only took a few weeks for me to compile, had saved them between 10 to 15 years of research they would have had to do themselves. With Guy's unique understanding and perspective, he has been able to show that the characteristics of UFOs, or UAPs, utilize air ionization for propulsion, and this is not beyond human technical ability. Guy points out that our first clue that these are man-made is the clustering of sightings that seem to occur in specific allied countries, especially the United States. These craft seem to avoid flying across the U.S.-Mexico border. Most UFO-UAP reports came out after World War II, and this video shows when and where many of the reports came from. It is very interesting that if these were aliens, they tend to be amalgamated over the U.S. and the United Kingdom early on, then into Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. These 5 countries are also known as the Five Eyes, which is an intelligence alliance formed during World War II between the UK and USA and expanded in 1948 to include Canada and 1956 to include both Australia and New Zealand, and the sightings in those countries begins to grow after their inclusion. If these were in fact aliens, there are few reasons why you would avoid China, Russia, Mexico, Africa, or any other large landmass. Another big clue that these craft likely originate from the U.S. are the large abundance of sightings in Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory, but very few in neighboring countries of the Dominican Republic or Haiti, which are not U.S. territories. Similarly, the Hawaiian Islands also have a disproportionate number of sightings when compared to other islands of comparable size and population. Madagascar, off the coast of East Africa with a population of 28 million, has virtually 0 sightings. Why do so many people believe this technology is alien? When we look at many of the UFOs or UAPs characteristics, we see a trend among many of them. Flight characteristics such as acceleration, speed, and maneuverability beyond known aircraft. No apparent engine or form of propulsion. Strange shapes, often saucer-shaped, cigar-shaped, or rounded. The continuous light source associated are often round, and the craft may be another shape such as a triangle, but with 3 circular lights near each corner. The main glow is usually limited to the underside of the craft, little to no noise associated with the craft. Closer observations report a humming noise. When flying, the lower hull will glow as a colored light or lights that often change color. The smell of ozone in the local vicinity. Lack of a sonic boom at speeds above Mach 1. Guy points out that all of these items can be attributed to either ion propulsion and/or electrostatic repulsion. If you ionize particular shapes, you can counter ions in the air to create lift and thrust. In 2018, it was demonstrated that spiders can fly hundreds of miles utilizing electrostatic repulsion. Their silk is negatively charged, and this repels the negative charge from our planet's surface. The shiny metallic skin in many sightings is likely an early requirement, as this metal would need to be ionized. Painting it any color would reduce this ability. More modern reports indicate some of these newer craft are black, and the ionization propulsion system is now limited to circles on the underside of the craft, allowing for different shapes and potentially larger vessels, but harder to observe the overall shape at night due to the black paint. And this paint may also be radar absorbent, as seen on the F-117 stealth fighter and B-2 stealth bomber. There is a huge electrical potential in the atmosphere. An electric field of 200 volts per meter would mean there would be a 400-volt difference between the ground and a point about 2 meters above the ground. That's about a 400-volt difference between our head and our toes when we step outside. Could we simply repel that negative ground charge with negative ions using electrostatic repulsion to levitate a saucer-shaped disk? Not very efficiently. It would require an enormous amount of energy and would unlikely be able to simulate some of the unique flight characteristics found in UFOs or UAPs. Kramer states, "There is something different going on here." In 1990, I took a trip with my father to Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji, where I conducted special experiments with a very sensitive ion detector developed by my grandfather. One particular experiment on that trip resulted in a substantial discovery. I discovered what causes wind. Kramer continues. In 1991, my grandfather and I were visited at his laboratory by 3 university professors: the head of geophysics for Simon Fraser University SFU, the head of geophysics for the University of British Columbia, UBC, and a professor of engineering and instrumentation for UBC. The professors looked at the instrument and the data I had obtained from that trip, and one of the professors exclaimed, "Do you know what you discovered?" To which I replied, "Yes." He responded, "You discovered what causes wind. You don't seem too excited about it. Your discovery would be considered a pinnacle achievement for many in my field." Guy concludes, "I will not go into details on what I actually discovered, but it is key to how you could utilize a system to counter it and exploit it to propel a flying craft that would have the traits we see in UFOs or UAPs, which means someone probably made a similar discovery many years earlier. Meaning the US allied governments have exploited this exotic propulsion system for decades in secret. The system would require round disks or a round hull to be powered in a specific manner to exploit this natural yet unseen and difficult to detect geophysics mechanism. A byproduct of this propulsion system creates ionization, which is the electric glowing hull or glowing disk seen on the bottom of the craft, the smell of ozone, and lack of engine noise. This is not beyond our knowledge and means to manufacture these craft. Scientists unfamiliar with this particular geophysics system, meaning almost all scientists, may see one of these craft in flight and conclude that it was well beyond our engineering capability. It is not. It was probably discovered by scientists in the late 1930s or 1940s. They haven't reverse-engineered alien craft from other worlds. They simply discovered this enigma, likely around World War II, and found a way to develop a propulsion system that utilizes it. If they were advanced aliens, why can't they make their craft invisible? Guy has already achieved this with flying drones and moving tanks, and his technology is still in the preliminary stages.